I had been alone for years, watching friends find love and settle down while I spent nights in front of the TV or scrolling through my phone was exhausting. So I decided to try online dating. That's how I met Claire. Her profile was perfect, almost too perfect. She loved hiking, old books, and cooking, just like me. Her messages were warm and funny, and I felt like I could talk to her about anything. After weeks of chatting, we agreed to meet in person. The day of our date, I was nervous but excited. We met at a little cafe. Claire looked even better in real life. Her long brown hair, bright smile, and kind eyes made me feel at ease. "Eric, it's so nice to finally meet you," she said, her voice soft and inviting. "You too, Claire," I replied, feeling my nerves melt away. The first date went perfectly. We laughed, shared stories, and talked for hours. It felt like we had known each other forever. She seemed to understand me in a way no one else ever had. But as we started seeing each other more, little things began to bother me. Claire seemed to know things I never told her. One day, she mentioned my childhood dog, Max. I froze. I hadn't told her about Max. "Did I tell you about him?" I asked. She smiled and waved it off. "You must have. You talk so openly, Eric." I nodded, but I didn't remember saying anything. Another time, she brought me my favorite coffee, exactly how I like it. I asked how she knew, and she laughed, saying, "You told me on our first date, silly." But I knew I hadn't. At first, I thought I was overthinking. Maybe I had shared more than I realized. But as time went on, her knowledge of me went beyond what was normal. She knew things I'd never shared with anyone, things I hadn't thought about in years. One night, she invited me to her house for dinner. It was a cozy little place on the edge of town, filled with candles and soft music. She cooked my favorite meal, which surprised me, but I didn't say anything. After dinner, she excused herself to the kitchen, and I wandered around, looking at her decorations. That's when I saw the locked door. Something about it felt wrong. The rest of the house was warm and inviting, but this door felt out of place, almost like it was hiding something. Curiosity got the better of me. I tried the handle. It was locked. "Eric?" Claire's voice called from behind me. I jumped, my heart racing. She was holding 2 glasses of wine, her smile tight. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Just looking around," I said quickly. "What's in here?" Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes darkened. "That's just my storage room. Nothing exciting." I nodded, but the unease stayed with me. Later that night, when she went to the bathroom, I noticed the key on her kitchen counter. My curiosity was unbearable. I grabbed it and slipped back to the locked door. The key fit perfectly. I turned it and pushed the door open, stepping inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, in the center of the room, was a life-sized doll. It looked exactly like me. Same hair, same face, even the small scar above my eyebrow from when I fell off my bike as a kid. The doll was dressed in clothes I owned, and on its arm was the same tattoo I'd gotten in college, something I had never shared online or mentioned to Claire. My heart pounded as I backed away, nearly tripping over a box. Inside were photos of me, some taken recently, others from years ago. There were notes about my daily routine, my likes and dislikes. "Eric?" Her voice came from the doorway. I turned to see her standing there, her face calm but her eyes blazing. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. What is this?" I stammered, pointing at the doll. She sighed like she was tired of hiding. "I've been watching you for years, Eric. Ever since I saw you at that coffee shop. You didn't notice me, but I noticed you." My stomach churned. "Years? What do you mean?" "I've always wanted someone like you," she said, her voice soft and almost loving, "but I had to wait for the right moment, so I made this." She gestured to the doll. It was a placeholder, something to keep me company until I could have the real you. My blood turned to ice. "You're crazy." Her face twisted into a frown. "Don't say that, Eric. I love you. You love me too. You just don't realize it yet." She stepped closer, and I realized she was holding something, a syringe. "Stay back," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't let you leave," she said, her voice breaking. "If you leave, I'll lose everything. Don't you see? We're meant to be together." Adrenaline kicked in. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and swung it at her. She cried out and dropped the syringe. I didn't wait to see if she was okay. I ran. I sprinted out of the house and into the night, not stopping until I reached my car. My hands shook as I fumbled for the keys. but I managed to start the engine and speed away. For days, I was too scared to leave my apartment. I blocked her number and deleted my dating profile. Eventually, I went to the police. They searched her house but found nothing. No doll, no photos, no sign of Claire. It was like she had vanished. Even now, months later, I can't shake the feeling that she's still out there, watching me. But I'm alive. I escaped, and I'll never trust a stranger again. That night taught me one thing. Some people's love is a trap, and it's better to be alone than caught in their web. I never thought I'd find love online. I'd heard all the horror stories, people getting catfished, scammed, or just meeting strange, creepy people. But one night, after another failed date and too many glasses of wine, I decided to give it a try. The dating app I found was called True Connect. It wasn't like the others. It was exclusive, and from what I read, it promised perfect matches. You didn't swipe left or right. Instead, you filled out this long, detailed questionnaire. The questions weren't just about your favorite music or food, but deep stuff. Your fears, your dreams, your past. I'm a pretty open guy, so I figured why not. Within hours, I got a match. Her name was Olivia. I stared at her picture. She was stunning, dark hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that could make you feel like you were the only person in the world. We started talking right away, and it felt easy. Too easy. It was like we'd known each other forever. We shared our love for art, movies, and hiking. I thought to myself, this is it. I finally found someone who gets me. After a few days of chatting, Olivia suggested we meet. We decided on a little cafe downtown, one of those cozy spots where you can sit for hours and not realize the time passing. When I saw her walk in, I felt a rush of excitement. She was even more beautiful in person. We spent the whole afternoon together, talking and laughing like we had all the time in the world. It felt perfect. As we said goodbye, she kissed me on the cheek, and I could feel my heart race. Over the next few weeks, we went on more dates. Olivia was everything I had ever wanted. Smart, funny, beautiful. But little things started to make me uneasy. She never talked about her family. When I asked about her childhood, she'd change the subject. I thought maybe it was just personal stuff she didn't want to share. After all, we'd only known each other a short time. But then the possessiveness started. At first, it was subtle. She'd text me every few hours to check in. Nothing crazy, just asking what I was up to or where I was. But then it got worse. She'd get upset if I didn't reply right away. One evening, I went out with some friends, and Olivia texted me repeatedly, asking why I hadn't called. I explained that I was just hanging out, but she didn't take it well. The next time we saw each other, she was quiet, almost distant. "I don't like when you're out without me," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You never used to ignore me like that." I didn't know what to say. I tried to brush it off, telling her I just wanted to spend time with my friends, but her eyes were cold, like she wasn't quite convinced. The next day, I got a strange email. There was no subject, just a single line. "Olivia isn't who she says she is. Be careful." I didn't know what to think. Was it a joke? A prank? I tried to forget about it, but something about it felt wrong. Still, I convinced myself that I was just being paranoid. But the more I thought about it, the more things didn't add up. I realized I didn't know much about Olivia's past. She'd never mentioned any old friends, her family, or where she lived. She would always brush off questions about her past with a laugh or a change of topic. One night, I decided to go through her purse while she was in the shower. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe it was just the feeling of something being off. Inside, I found her ID, but it wasn't the name she had given me. The name was completely different. I stared at the ID for a long time, feeling a cold chill run through me. I knew I had to confront her. But before I could make up my mind, I found a small, old-fashioned key inside her bag. It didn't look like anything important, but there was a note tied to it. It read, "The house is still locked. Don't forget the key." What was going on? I'd never seen this key before. It felt like she had a life that I didn't know about, a life she was hiding from me. When she came out of the shower, I asked her about it. "Olivia, who is this?" I showed her the ID. She froze for a second, then smiled and said, "You're going through my stuff?" She didn't seem angry, just calm. Too calm. "Why can't you trust me?" I felt guilty, like I was the one who had done something wrong. She had a way of making me doubt myself. I apologized and tried to move past it, but the nagging feeling in the back of my mind wouldn't go away. The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I looked her up. I Googled her name, both the one on the ID and the one she had given me. I found nothing about her. No social media profiles, no old photos, nothing. It was like she had no history at all. I decided to dig into the dating app, TrueConnect. When I contacted them about Olivia, they didn't respond. I emailed again, no reply. That's when I started to panic. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. And then it happened. Olivia disappeared. She didn't show up for our date one night. I called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, but there was no response. I didn't know what to think. I drove to her apartment, but it was empty. No note. Nothing. I returned to my apartment to find it ransacked. My things were gone. My laptop, my phone, all my personal stuff. There was just one note on my desk. You were getting too close. Goodbye. I felt sick. What was going on? I knew something was wrong with Olivia, but I didn't know how deep it went. The days that followed were even worse. I felt like I was being followed. Everywhere I went, I saw the same black car parked down the street. And every time I looked over my shoulder, there was someone watching. I tried to run, but no matter where I went, I couldn't escape the feeling that Olivia, or someone like her, was out there. And I knew deep down she was still watching.
It was supposed to be a fun night out. My friends and I had planned to meet at this new bar downtown. I was excited, dressed up in a red dress that I'd saved for special occasions. I even arrived early, something I rarely do. The bar was buzzing with people. The low hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses filled the air. I grabbed a small table near the corner and texted my friends. "Running late," one replied. "Can't make it tonight, sorry," said another. Great, I sipped my drink and waited. Time dragged on, and the excitement I'd felt earlier started to fade. It didn't help that a group of loud guys at the bar kept glancing over. Their laughter seemed louder every time they looked in my direction. Finally, one of them walked over. "Hey there, gorgeous," he slurred, leaning on my table. His breath smelled like whiskey and regret. "You here alone?" "No," I lied. "My friends will be here any minute." But he didn't take the hint. "How about you ditch them and hang out with me instead?" I tried to be polite. "I'm not interested, thanks." He chuckled, ignoring me. "Come on, don't be like that." His hand reached for my arm. "Leave her alone." I turned to see who had spoken. Standing behind the guy was another man, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and piercing green eyes. He looked calm but firm, the kind of guy who didn't need to raise his voice to be intimidating. The drunk guy hesitated, then scowled. "Whatever, man." He stumbled back to his friends. "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. "No problem," the man replied. "You looked uncomfortable." His name was Ethan, and he seemed perfect. He asked if he could join me, and I nodded. We talked for hours. He was charming, funny, and attentive. He made me feel safe in a way I hadn't expected. By the end of the night, I had given him my number. Ethan and I started dating soon after. He was everything I'd ever wanted, sweet, thoughtful, and protective. He would surprise me with flowers, remember the little things I said, and always made time for me. But there were moments, small ones at first, that felt off. The first time was when I mentioned an old college friend, a guy I used to study with. Ethan's smile faded. "You still talk to him?" he asked. "Not really," I said, brushing it off. "We're just friends on Facebook." Ethan didn't say anything, but later that night, I noticed he had gone through my phone. "Why were you looking at my messages?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "I just wanted to make sure he wasn't bothering you," he said. "I don't like the thought of someone taking advantage of your kindness." It sounded sweet at the time, but it also felt strange. Things got worse after that. Ethan started showing up unexpectedly, at my work, my gym, even outside my apartment. "Just wanted to surprise you," he'd say, always with that charming smile. But the surprises started to feel more like surveillance. One night, I went out with my friends for the first time in weeks. I didn't tell Ethan because I wanted some space, but halfway through the night, he showed up at the bar. "I thought you said you were staying in tonight," he said, his voice calm, but his eyes cold. I stammered an excuse. but he didn't seem to believe me. He stayed the rest of the night, watching me like a hawk. Then, the nightmares began. It started with small things. I'd find my phone in a different spot than I'd left it, or notice my apartment door unlocked, even though I was sure I'd locked it. One night, I woke up to the feeling of being watched. My room was dark, but I could swear I saw a shadow move near the window. I told myself it was just my imagination. But the next morning, I found a single rose on my kitchen counter. I hadn't brought it in. I confronted Ethan. "Have you been coming into my apartment without telling me?" His expression didn't change. "Why would you think that?" "Because things keep happening," I said, my voice shaking. "Things that don't make sense." Ethan stepped closer, his face calm but his eyes intense. "You're being paranoid," he said. "Maybe you should stop going out so much and take better care of yourself." I froze. His tone was so different from the sweet, caring Ethan I thought I knew. That night, I decided to end things. I planned to do it over the phone, but he didn't answer my calls. Instead, he showed up at my apartment. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. I tried to stay calm. "Ethan, I think we need a break." His jaw tightened. "A break? After everything I've done for you?" He stepped closer, and for the first time, I felt afraid of him. "You don't mean that," he said. "You're just upset. Let's talk about this." But I stood my ground. "No, Ethan, it's over." His face darkened, but he didn't say anything. He just turned and walked out the door. I thought that was the end of it. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. Then, the messages started. At first, they were sweet, apologies and pleas for another chance. But when I didn't respond, they became angry. "You'll regret this," one read. I blocked his number, but the messages didn't stop. They came from unknown numbers and even emails. One night, I came home to find my front door open. Inside, everything was untouched, except for my bedroom. On the bed was a photo of me and Ethan, torn in half. I called the police, but without solid evidence, they couldn't do much. So I decided to leave. I packed my things and moved to a new apartment across town. I didn't tell anyone except my family where I was going. For a while, things seemed normal again. Until one night when I came home late from work. As I unlocked my door, I felt it, that same feeling of being watched. I turned and saw him, standing in the shadows at the end of the hallway. "You can't run from me," Ethan said, his voice calm but chilling. My heart pounded as I stepped inside and locked the door. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. That was 6 months ago. I've moved again, this time to another city. I've changed my number, deleted all my social media, and tried to rebuild my life. But sometimes, late at night, I still feel like I'm being watched. And every time I see a single red rose, I wonder if he's found me again.